Enroll your child for the manifested e-learning platform and see their grades grow tremendously. These videos can be downloaded to a laptop for offline viewing or viewed from a smartphone in a course-friendly format.
Learners, welcome to our today's geography lesson. We proceed with the topic external landforming processes. In our last lesson, we defined weathering as the mechanical breakdown or chemical decay of rocks as a result of their exposure or their nearness to the Earth's surface. We went further to state that rocks break up because they have been acted on by the elements of weather. We say that these elements of weather are known as the agents of weathering. We named air, water, ice, and biological organisms as examples of agents of weathering. Learners, in our today's lesson, we're going to discuss the factors influencing weathering. Learners, welcome to the lesson. The subject is known as geography. Let me write it here. Geography. The topic, external landforming processes. External landforming processes. External landforming processes is the chapter. And today we want to discuss the factors influencing weathering. Factors influencing weathering. The chemical breakdown and the disintegration of rocks, learners. Now, learners, the type of weathering taking place in a region and the rate at which it takes place, right, is influenced by several factors. The rate at which weathering takes place in a given region and the rate at which rocks are weathered or crumbles or disintegrates are influenced by several factors. These factors include, learners, 1, climate, 2, topography, 3, chemical composition of rocks, 4, rock structure, and 5, the rock texture, and also the biological organisms. So I want us to discuss climate first as a factor influencing weathering. Okay? Weathering. So let me put down an important sentence. The type of weathering taking place, I had said earlier that the type of weathering taking place in a region, okay? Taking place in a region is influenced or can be influenced by several factors. These factors include A, climate, B, topography. C, I mentioned the chemical composition of rocks, chemical composition of rocks. D, the rock structure. There is E, the rock texture. I've also mentioned biological organisms. Biological organisms. These are some of the factors, learners. So I want us first to discuss climate as a factor that influences weathering. Climate. How does climate influence weathering? How does climate influence weathering? Now, learners, climate has a significant influence on both the type and the rate of weathering that may affect a particular rock. When we talk of climate, we are referring to things like the temperature, the frost, the rain, the humidity, and also the sunshine. These are the main components of climate which are influential in weathering. 1, temperature. 2, frost. 3, rain. 4, humidity, and also sunshine. 5 things, main elements of climate which are influential in weathering. Okay, and learners, since different regions of the world experience different climatic conditions, weathering processes vary from one region to the other. From one region to the other. And the type of weathering experienced in, for example, the type of weathering experienced in the hot and equatorial regions, for example, the hot and the wet equatorial regions, may differ from the one experienced in the cold temperate regions. These are climatic conditions. So climate has a significant influence on both the type and rate of weathering affecting a rock. Okay? Climate. Climate, learners, let me repeat. Climate has a significant influence. Has a significant influence on the type and the rate. The type, okay, the type and the rate, okay, of weathering. The type and rate of weathering, of weathering a particular rock. A particular rock. I've mentioned things like temperature, frost, rain. What else? I mentioned humidity and sunshine. Temperature, frost, rain, humidity, and sunshine are the main elements of climate. Okay, are the main elements of climate that influence weathering of rocks. Weathering of rocks. And I've said that since different regions of the world experience different climatic conditions, then weathering will vary from one region to the other region. And the type of weathering experienced in the hot and, for example, the wet equatorial regions may not be the same that is experienced in the cold temperate regions. Climatic conditions. That is climate. We've done climate. How about topography? Topography. 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 What is topography? Topography, learners, is the study of the shape and physical features of land surfaces. That's the meaning of topography. It is the study of the shape and physical features of land surfaces. So how does it influence weathering? Now, learners, the relief of a region, influences the weathering processes. Okay? The relief of a region. When I say the relief of a region, I'm referring to the terrain, of a region. Okay? The terrain of a region, which is maybe looked at as the opposite of the flatness of a region. So the terrain of a region, or the relief of a region, influences the weathering process taking place in that region. The relief of a region, or the terrain of a region, influences the weathering process. The weathering process that take place in that region. The relief of a region, the terrain of a region. Learners, for example, in the highland areas, where the slope is steep, weathering process is much faster than in the lowland areas or in flat areas, okay, where the slope is gentle. Because, learners, on the steep slopes, the weather materials are washed away very quickly, and thereby leaving the rocks exposed, okay? Exposing the rocks, okay? Exposing the rock to the surface. Exposing the rocks to the surface. And when the rock is exposed to the surface, then it's again exposed to the agents of weathering, all right? When the slope is steep, learners, okay? Weathering is faster than in flat areas or where the slope is gentle. Because I've said on the steep slopes, the weathered materials are done what? Are washed away quickly, exposing the rock surface to more agents of weathering. So the rocks are exposed to the agents of weathering, like the air, the water, and so on. Okay, but on the flat surfaces, learners, the materials remain in place, covering the rocks. The rocks remain covered beneath, so they are not exposed to the agents of weathering, and that slows the rate of or the rate at which the rocks are broken down. So that the topography, the terrain of a region, the relief of a region, okay, influences the rate at which weathering of rocks takes place in that region. So in places where the topography, the relief, there is steep slopes in highlands, then weathering takes place at a faster rate compared to flat areas. So the relief of a region influences the weathering process that takes place in that region. I've given an example of terrains that are steep and those that are gentle. Then learners, chemical composition of rocks. Chemical composition of rocks. Chemical composition of rocks also influences the weathering process, the breaking down of rocks. Now, learners, hope you've seen different types of rocks before. There are these rocks that are dark colored. You must have seen some dark colored rocks. There are some rocks that are shiny, right? They are dark colored rocks. We have shiny rocks. The reason is because of their chemical composition. Chemical composition is what causes some rocks to look dark colored, and others are shiny. Now, learners, the variation in color and the mineral composition of rocks, because the rocks are composed of minerals. So the variation in color and the mineral composition of rocks influences weathering. And how does that happen? How does the variation in color and the mineral composition influence the weathering or the breaking down or the disintegration of rocks? How does it happen? Now, learners, the dark colored rocks absorb more heat than the shiny rocks. Dark colored rocks absorb more heat. And we know, learners, that heat is an agent of weathering, all right? So the dark colored rocks, learners, absorb more heat than the shiny rocks. So the shiny rocks, learners, because they are shining, they tend to reflect back most of the sun's rays. So when the sun rays hit the shiny rocks, instead of the rocks absorbing the heat, that heat is reflected back. Right? Shiny rocks reflect back most of the sun's rays, learners. And we know the more heat a rock absorbs, the greater the chances of it breaking up due to excessive expansion and contraction. So therefore, learners, the dark colored rocks break more easily than the light colored or shiny rocks, because the dark colored rocks do not reflect the sun's rays back. They absorb the heat. And due to absorption of the heat, they tend to expand excessively. Expand and contract. Expand and contract. They are hit by the sun, they absorb the heat. They are hit by the rain, they contract. So that process of expanding and contracting, learners, causes the dark-colored rocks to do what? To break, to disintegrate, as opposed to the shiny rocks that reflect back the rays. So the dark-colored rocks therefore do what? Break up more easily than the light-colored rocks. So that is chemical composition of rocks. And I've explained how it influences weathering. So let me put down one sentence. Make sure you write, learners, these notes. When I say you write, because you need that for your revision. But at the end of this lesson, I'm going to give you an assignment, learners. So I've said that the variation in color of minerals, the variation in color and the mineral composition of rocks influences weathering. I want you to put down that point, that the variation in color and mineral composition of a rock influences weathering. The what? The variation, learners, in color and the mineral composition of a rock influences weathering. Influences the wearing out, the weathering of the rock. It influences weathering of the rock. And I've explained that the dark-colored rocks, learners, there are rocks that are dark-colored, others are light-colored. The reason why one rock is dark-colored and the other one is shiny or light-colored is due to their chemical composition. It's not painting. The rocks were not painted with dark color and light color. No. It's because of their chemical composition. The reason why one rock is dark colored and the other one is light colored is because they are composed differently. They are unique. All right? So the one that is dark colored tends to absorb more heat than the one that is light colored, because the one that is light colored does not take in heat. Because when the sun hits the shiny rocks, when the sun hits that rock, the rock reflects back. Therefore, it's not affected by heat, or the sun, which is an agent of weathering. It's like a defense mechanism, learners. It's just also wearing when you wear dark-colored clothes, learners. We all know when you are putting on black. People put on black when it is cold. But when it is very hot, or when the sun is very harsh, people tend to put on white garments. Because when you put on white, then that white colors, the white colors reflect the light, So that's the point. Chemical composition of rocks. So learners, we have discussed three factors influencing weathering. 1, climate. we've said has a significant influence on the type and the rate of weathering of a particular rock. We've mentioned some of the components: temperature, frost, rain, humidity, and sunshine. Then we discussed topography. We said that topography of a region influences the weathering process that takes place there. We gave examples of highland areas and lowland areas. We said where the slope is steep, the weathering process is faster than in the lowland areas because of the terrain, learners, the terrain. In the highland areas where we have steep slopes, the weathered minerals are washed away quickly. And when they are washed away quickly, they leave the rocks exposed. The rocks are exposed to the agents of weathering, like the sunshine, like the rain, okay, and water. They are exposed, so they can receive sunshine. Okay, when they are hit with sunshine, we've seen that when the rocks are exposed to sunshine, that heat, okay, that heat, if the rock is dark colored, then that heat will cause the expansion, excessive expansion and contraction of the rock, leading to the disintegration of the rock, the weathering of the rock. So is that clear, learners? You see, the concept is straightforward, learners. This concept of weathering is very straightforward. We are talking about external land forming, how soil is formed. And we are saying that we are discussing how the weathering process helps in land forming of land, learners, external. In Form 2, we learned about the tectonic forces, the internal forces that contribute to formation of land. In Form 3, we are discussing the external land forming processes. In Form 2, we learned about the internal, the tectonic processes, forces. So that is point number 3, learners. We are going to stop at chemical composition. I've discussed chemical composition of rocks. Now, in our next lesson, we continue to learn more about the factors influencing weathering. We will do rock structure, how the rock texture influences weathering, and biological organisms. So learners, go through the lesson once more, write notes, then answer the following questions. These are your revision questions. Revision questions. Number 1, what is denudation? What is denudation? Learners, remember I defined it in our last lesson. Learners, denudation. Number 2, explain questions. Number 1, what is denudation? Number 2, explain how the following factors influence weathering. A, climate. B, topography. C, chemical composition of rocks. When answering the questions, please, learners, make sure you don't refer to your exercise books or your textbooks or the video. Try and retrieve the answers from your memory. That's how you learn. That's how you know whether you have mastered or you have understood what we have learned in our class. Thank you and bye-bye.
Thank you for choosing to study with us. For more information, you can call us on 0724 173845.